The storm rolled over the city in slow, shuddering waves, swallowing the last of the streetlights outside St. Brigid's General Hospital. Wind hammered the glass walls of the lobby, making them tremble like something was trying to get in. The night shift had finally quieted, nurses sipping lukewarm coffee, a janitor humming softly as he mopped, the triage desk bathed in the pale glow of monitors. Then the automatic doors hissed open. No one was standing there. For a moment, the staff assumed it was the wind again. But then a shape staggered into the light. Slow, uneven, dragging. A German shepherd. Soaked with rain. Shivering. Bleeding. Her belly hung low and tight with unborn life, but her legs trembled under her weight. Every step left a small, dark smear on the white tiles. Conversations died. Someone gasped. Security fumbled for radios, unsure whether to approach her or back away. But the dog didn't look at any of them. Her eyes searched the lobby, wild, terrified, desperate, until they locked on a single person frozen beside the triage desk. Ella Rowan. Exhausted, sleepless, and rubbing at the headache pounding behind her eyes, Ella felt something inside her stop. The shepherd's gaze was sharp, almost human in its urgency, as if she had crossed the storm and the city just to find her. The dog took one shaking step. Then another. Her legs buckled. She collapsed onto the cold floor. A startled chorus of voices rose around them, but before anyone could pull Ella back, the shepherd forced her paw forward, dragging it inch by inch across the tile, until it touched the tip of Ella's shoe. A faint sound escaped her, not a bark, not a growl, just a trembling, broken whine. A plea. Ella dropped to her knees. She laid her hand gently on the dog's head, ignoring the shouts behind her. The shepherd shivered beneath her touch but didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned into it, eyes fluttering weakly, as if she had finally found what she'd been searching for. "Hey," Ella whispered, her voice barely steady. "I've got you. You're safe now." But the warmth spreading across her scrubs made her breath hitch. The dog was hemorrhaging, and she was fading fast. No one in that lobby knew it yet. Not the nurses, not the guards, not even Ella, but this bleeding, dying shepherd was about to change all their lives. She had fought her way through the night for a reason, and that reason was lying inside her, still and fragile, waiting for a chance at life. That was the night Rex entered their world. And everything began. Ella didn't remember standing, only the sudden rush of movement, voices snapping into action around her. "Get a gurney! She's losing too much blood." "Someone call the on-call vet." "No, forget it. Just get trauma in here." The shepherd tried to lift her head at the noise, but collapsed again, eyes glazing. Ella slid her arms under the trembling body. The dog was heavier than she expected, but limp, far too limp. "Easy, girl, stay with me," she murmured, lifting her carefully. The instant the shepherd felt supported, she released a long, exhausted breath and let her head fall against Ella's shoulder. As they rushed down the hallway, Ella could feel the rapid, uneven heartbeat through her scrubs. Too fast, too weak, and under her hands, the dog's swollen abdomen shifted. 2, maybe 3 pups inside, fighting for space and survival. Ella swallowed hard. "Prep trauma room 3. Get blankets." Someone page Dr. Mendez now. The hospital scrambled around her, but the world had narrowed to the fading rise and fall of the shepherd's chest. Blood dripped steadily onto the floor as Ella carried her through the double doors of the trauma bay. Bright lights hit them. Monitors beeped to life. A resident rushed forward. What happened? Did she get hit by a car? "I don't know," Ella said, lowering the shepherd onto the table. "But she came in alone. And she came to me." As soon as Ella released her, the dog whimpered, soft, pleading, and lifted her paw again, blindly searching. Even half-conscious, she was reaching for Ella. Ella caught it gently. "I'm right here." Dr. Mendez burst into the room, tying her hair into a bun. "Vitals. Barely stable," the resident answered. "She's in active labor but hemorrhaging badly. She won't survive delivery without intervention." Mendez's expression tightened. "If she was a human patient, we'd go straight into emergency surgery." "She deserves the same chance," Ella said, surprising even herself with the force of her voice. The room went still. Mendez met her eyes. "Then let's save her," she said. The team moved. Tools clattered. Gloves snapped. Ella was asked to step back, but each time she tried, the shepherd's paw twitched toward her again. So the staff finally let her stand at the head of the table, her hand resting gently between the dog's ears. The shepherd's eyes opened one last time. Amber. Clouded. Trusting. Then they fluttered closed. "Starting the incision," Mendez announced. Minutes felt like hours. And then, a sound. A tiny, high-pitched cry. Ella gasped, tears springing to her eyes as Dr. Mendez lifted the first pup into view, slick and small but fighting for breath. "One alive," the doctor said, checking for the others. Another cry followed. Then another. 3 pups. All breathing. But when Ella looked down at the shepherd, her heart clenched. The mother's breathing had gone shallow. Far too shallow. "Her pressure's dropping," a nurse warned. Mendez worked faster. "Come on, girl. Stay with us." But Ella could feel it, the slowing heartbeat beneath her palm. The trembling that faded into stillness. The last desperate effort that her body had been holding onto for hours. The monitor gave a long, unbroken tone. The room froze. Ella bowed her head over the dog's still form, tears falling silently into her fur. "You did it," she whispered. "They made it. You can rest now." Dr. Mendez placed a small, warm bundle into Ella's arms, a newborn shepherd pup, squirming weakly. "She saved them," the doctor murmured. "They're alive because of her." Ella held the tiny pup against her chest, feeling its heartbeat, fragile but steady. In the corner of the room, the other nurses were already cleaning the siblings, wrapping them in blankets, whispering soft praises none of them could understand. But none of the pups made a sound, until the smallest one, the one in Ella's arms, let out a tiny bark. Ella looked down. The pup stared back at her. That was the moment she knew, without understanding why, that this pup wasn't just a survivor. He was a promise. And he was hers. The pups lay bundled in warm towels against the heating unit, barely bigger than Ella's palms, their tiny chests rising and falling in fragile rhythms. The trauma bay had begun to settle, but the air still held a charge, like the aftershock of a lightning strike. Nurses whispered. Security hovered near the doorway, unsure whether to step closer or keep their distance. The smell of antiseptic clung to everything. Ella wiped her eyes with the back of her wrist. She still knelt beside the mother's still form, her hand resting gently between the shepherd's ears. She hadn't moved since the monitor flatlined. Then a muffled noise. Not from the pups. From the hallway. A sudden chorus of shouts broke out, followed by frantic footfalls. A nurse burst into the room. "We've got another one." Ella spun around. "Another what?" "A dog, same breed, same injury. Bleeding out in the lobby." The room erupted. For a second, no one moved. Then everything happened at once, voices overlapping, stretchers scraping the floor, alarms flickering awake again. Ella stood, adrenaline snapping her upright. She pulled off her blood-soaked gloves and hurried toward the hallway. The second shepherd was being hauled in by 2 paramedics, his fur matted with blood, his breathing ragged. He wasn't as far along in the injury pattern as the mother, but he was close. And he was fighting. The moment he saw unfamiliar hands reaching toward him, he thrashed violently, kicking, twisting, his jaws snapping at the air. Nurses jumped back. "Sedate him now," someone yelled. The dog lunged. Then his gaze landed on Ella. Everything stopped. He froze mid-snarl, breath shuddering, muscles locking up as if someone had pressed a hand to his spine. His ears twitched forward. His eyes widened, not with fear. Recognition. He let out a low, broken sound, half warning, half plea. Rex. The smallest pup had barely been placed in her arms before this one staggered into the hospital. The same markings. The same eyes. The same raw desperation. Ella stepped forward slowly. "Hey. I'm right here. No one's going to hurt you." Rex lowered his head, panting hard, but he backed away from the hands holding him straight toward her. One more step and his legs buckled. Ella moved without thinking and caught his weight before he hit the floor. "It's okay," she whispered, lowering him gently. I've got you. The hospital erupted in chaos, behind them more shouts, more scrambling, but Rex only had eyes for her. His breaths rattled like gravel in his lungs. Dr. Mendez appeared, eyes wide. We can't treat another one in the main trauma bay. We need space. We don't have space, a nurse shot back. Not for a full procedure. Yes, we do, Ella said quietly. She looked at the closed door at the end of the corridor, the old pediatric trauma room. The one unused since renovations began. Lights off. Equipment half removed. But still sanitary, still functional, still private. We use that one, Ella said. Mendez hesitated for only a second. Fine. Move him. A few staff followed, but Rex growled the moment any of them got too close. A deep, guttural sound torn straight from his ribs. Only Ella was permitted within reach. She slid an arm under him again. His fur was sticky with blood, warm and trembling. As she lifted, he let out a sharp whine but didn't fight her. He pressed his head against her shoulder, seeking something she didn't yet understand. She carried him down the hallway, her heart pounding so hard she felt it in her throat. Inside the pediatric room, the lights flickered on with a soft buzz. The pastel walls were faded, the child height examination table still draped in plastic sheeting. Ella lowered Rex carefully onto the table. The moment she stepped back, even an inch, he let out a weak growl warning anyone approaching from behind her. His eyes never left her. Dr. Mendez exchanged a look with the resident. He'll only let her handle him. You want me to restrain him? Ella asked. No, Mendez said. He trusts you. Stay close. Talk to him. Keep him with us. Rex trembled under the overhead light. His fur parted easily under Mendez's careful hands, revealing dark bruising, open cuts, and Ella's breath stopped. Around his ribs. Around his throat. Faint, raw, circular grooves. Rope burns. Not accidental. Not from running. Not from a fight or a fall. Someone had held him. Hurt him. Dragged him. Deliberately. Ella swallowed, but her voice came out unsteady. Dr. Mendez. Look at this. Mendez leaned closer. Her mouth tightened. This isn't from an accident. Someone did this. The words hit harder than Ella expected. Someone had done this. To a mother who had crawled into their hospital to give her pups a chance. To a father who had staggered in moments later, half dead but fighting to reach her. To a newborn litter now orphaned and alone. Ella placed her hand on Rex's head. His trembling slowed. His breathing steadied, not better, but calmer. It's okay, boy, she whispered. You're safe now. Rex blinked slowly, his body sinking into the table as if her voice had been holding him up. Mendez moved around him carefully, her hands checking for fractures. When she lifted his left foreleg, Ella saw the underside of his paw. More abrasions. More burns. Marks of struggling. He'd fought something hard. And lost. Mendez shook her head. He was tied down. Restrained. And the mother, she gestured toward the trauma bay down the hall. We need to contact animal control. No, Ella said it before she could think. The room stilled. Mendez raised a brow. Ella. Look at him. Ella's voice cracked. Look at the way he reacts to men. Look at the injuries. Someone hurt this dog. Someone might still be out there. If we hand him off now, he'll disappear into a system that won't investigate. He deserves better than that. Rex lifted his head weakly and nudged her hand. Ella froze. He nudged again, slow, shaky, but intentional, pushing his nose against her palm. Mendez let out a long breath. We're not animal detectives. We're medical professionals. And he came here for help, Ella said softly, stroking Rex's head. Just like she did. Rex exhaled a shuddering breath and lowered his head onto the table. His eyes fluttered closed. But before they shut fully, he did something that struck Ella like a punch. He crawled inch by painful inch until his forehead rested against her wrist. He didn't trust anyone else. Not the doctor. Not the nurses. Not the hands trying to save him. Just her. Ella swallowed the lump in her throat. "Okay," she whispered. "I'm right here." Mendez stepped back. "All right. We'll stabilize him first. And then we'll talk about next steps." Ella nodded, never taking her hand from Rex's head. The exam continued, and the evidence grew uglier. There were older marks under the fresh wound's scars from past pain. The pattern of the burns suggested friction. The bruising around the ribs suggested blunt force, not accidental. Every inch of Rex's body told the same story. Violence, control, escape, desperation, and then something that froze Ella's blood. A tiny patch of fur shaved unevenly. Not by a groomer, by a knife. Mendez's face darkened. This was deliberate, purposeful. Someone had him restrained long enough to do this. Ella closed her eyes. The pups. The mother. Rex, fighting to reach the hospital. Someone had wanted something from them. And someone had wanted them gone. Rex suddenly let out a low whimper, his body curling slightly not from pain, but from fear. Ella immediately placed her hand against his cheek. "Shoo, hey. I've got you." Rex shuddered again, then went still. The door cracked open slightly. A security guard poked his head in. We've got the pups in warming blankets. The littlest one is, well, it's making a lot of noise. Should we bring them here?" Rex's ears twitched. Ella felt him respond instantly, lifting his head an inch. He looked toward the door, his eyes wide. The pups. He was still trying to protect them, even now. "Bring them," Ella said. Moments later, the guard returned with 3 small bundles. He set them carefully on the clean end of the table. The tiniest one, the one who had barked earlier, let out another soft cry the moment Rex's scent reached him. Rex's chest hitched. Not quite a sob. Not quite a breath. But a sound of recognition. Ella's heart nearly broke. She slid the smallest pup closer. Rex lowered his head and touched his nose gently to the pup's tiny skull. The trembling in his body slowed. His breathing steadied further. "Yeah," Ella whispered. "They're okay. They're safe. You did good." Rex closed his eyes and let out a long breath, like the first true exhale since he'd walked through those hospital doors. And in that moment, Ella knew the truth. They had not rescued Rex. He had come to save what was left of his family, and he had chosen her to help him do it. The room was quiet now. The chaos of the hospital faded behind the closed door. It was just Ella, the wounded dog pressing his head into her palm, and the 3 tiny lives nestled beside him. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't random. This was the beginning of something deeper, darker, and far more dangerous than she'd realized. Rex lifted his head weakly and nudged her hand again, smaller this time, trembling. Not fear. Not pain. Trust. Ella leaned down, her forehead resting lightly against his. "I'm not leaving you." His eyes closed. His breathing slowed. But he didn't pull away from her touch. Not once. And if you're still here, reading this moment, this fragile, raw, impossible moment, then you're part of the kind of community that refuses to look away from the hard parts. Thank you. The pediatric trauma room had transformed into a war zone of quiet desperation. Monitors beeped in stuttering rhythms. The overhead lights cast harsh white circles on Rex's battered frame. The pups slept in a cluster of warm towels beside him, their tiny bodies rising and falling like fragile hopes clinging to life. Outside the door, the hospital still hummed with post-storm chaos. But inside this room, there was only Rex, broken, bleeding, and barely hanging on, and Ella, who refused to step even an inch away from him. Dr. Mendez swept in first, gloves already on, jaw clenched. "We need to prep for deeper examination. He's stable enough to investigate the extent of internal trauma." Another doctor followed, flipping through a chart. "We should transfer him to Animal ER. They're equipped for this." A nurse shook her head sharply. "They said 2 hours. Storm knocked out their power grid. They're doing manual only. He won't survive the transport." "He won't survive if we keep improvising," the doctor shot back. "Improvising." Ella's voice cracked across the room like lightning. We saved him. He walked into our hospital because there was nowhere else to go. The argument ricocheted between the walls. Mendez raised a hand. Enough. Until Animal ER stabilizes, he stays here. But we follow hospital protocol. Understood. A chorus of reluctant nods. Ella didn't nod. She merely stroked Rex's head gently, her thumb brushing the spot between his ears where his fur was softest. What do you need me to do? You stay exactly where you are, Mendez said. He trusts you. That's keeping him alive. Rex let out a small exhale, his body twitching under the cold table, as though reacting to the rising tension in the room. Ella leaned close, whispering, I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere. The growling returned low, soft, but unmistakable every time someone stepped too close without warning. But when Ella moved, his tail twitched weakly. His eyes followed her. His breath eased. A nurse murmured, I've never seen anything like this. Ella didn't look up. Neither have I. Mendez began the deeper physical assessment. Let's start with the flank injuries. She pressed gently into the bruised areas along Rex's ribcage. He whimpered but didn't lash out, not with Ella's palm cupping his cheek. The lights caught the bruises in stark detail. Dark, swollen patches forming irregular but familiar shapes. Mendez stiffened. Everyone, look at this. The nearest nurse leaned over and her hand flew to her mouth. Is that a shoe print? Ella froze. It was faint, but they're an oval shape with patterned lines. Not random impact. A boot. Heavy. Human. Ella's throat went dry. He was kicked. More bruises followed the first, some overlapping, some distinct, some older than others. They formed a map of cruelty, layered in varying shades of purple, green, and sickly yellow. Someone hadn't just hurt Rex. Someone had beaten him. Repeatedly. Ella felt the room tilt slightly, her pulse echoing in her ears. She steadied herself by placing a hand on the table and Rex, sensing the shift, nudged her wrist weakly. She inhaled sharply. Good boy, she whispered. You're doing so well. Mendez moved lower, examining the belly. We need to check for pregnancy-related trauma. She lifted the edge of Rex's fur. The entire room went silent. Around his midsection, just beneath the ribs, was a deep indentation wrapped almost perfectly around his torso, an angry, raw burn circling him like a cruel belt. Rope. Ella's fingernails dug into her palms. No, 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 no. Mendez's voice dropped to a whisper. This wasn't an accident. Someone tied him. Tight. Long enough to dig into the tissue. And the mother, the nurse began, then stopped, eyes hollowing as the truth clicked. Someone had tried to kill them. The pups. The mother who had died on the table. Rex, barely making it in time. This wasn't survival by chance. This was escape. Ella's vision blurred, memories clawing their way up from the deepest part of her mind, the place she never looked. A whimper in the backyard when she was 9. A flash of red on fur. Her father shouting to call the vet. A neighbor's boy laughing, holding a stick. Her dog's body, small and shaking, unable to recover. She had learned, far too young, that some people hurt animals simply because they could. The memory slammed into her chest so hard she almost couldn't breathe. Ella blinked away the burn in her eyes and steadied her hand on Rex's shoulder. I won't let that happen again. Not to him. He looked up at her, exhausted, defeated, but trusting her with everything he had left. Mendez continued examining. These abrasions, the rope burns, the patterned bruising. Someone restrained him and the mother. Someone planned this. But why? A nurse whispered. Ella shook her head. I don't know. But he fought hard enough to get here. He knew this was the only place someone would help. Someone. Not anyone. Her. The door cracked open again. Another nurse stepped in, breathless. The staff downstairs. They heard what happened. They're sending supplies. Behind her, more figures gathered, nurses, residents, even custodians peeking in, offering blankets, sterile wraps, warm fluids. A ripple of human warmth in a sterile room. They care. Ella whispered. Rex's tail twitched again. Even barely alive, he understood the rising tide of empathy around him. The energy of people rallying, not out of protocol, but out of human decency. An older nurse stepped forward with a bag of 4 fluids. "Tell us what to do. We're not leaving until he stabilizes." A custodian set down a small heater. "Room gets drafty from the old vents. Keep the pups warm." A resident, still in soaked scrubs from the storm, murmured, "We don't get many chances to be part of something that matters." Ella swallowed, her throat tight. This wasn't supposed to happen. Hospitals didn't rally around animals. People didn't drop everything for a dog that had no name, no owner, no history. And yet they did. Because Rex mattered. He represented all the things people wish the world still cared about. Truth, innocence, loyalty, the kind of love that sacrifices itself to save the defenseless. Mendez resumed examining the rope burn. "Ella, keep talking to him. He tenses less when you speak." Ella nodded, wiping a streak of blood from her cheek with her sleeve. She leaned down, letting him smell her breath, grounding him. "You're safe now," she whispered. "They can't hurt you anymore. Not here. Not while I'm with you." The rope indentation was deeper on one side. Mendez pointed to the worsening abrasion. "This spot, someone pulled here. Hard. Like they were trying to drag him." A nurse's eyes filled with tears. "But he protected them. He protected the pups even while." Rex whimpered, legs trembling. Ella placed one steadying hand on his ribs. "Shoo. I know. I know." Her voice softened to a lull that felt older than language. Something ancient. Something instinctual. The same something that had drawn the mother dog into the hospital's shining doors despite her agony. The same something that had guided Rex to Ella's feet. Compassion. Mendez's voice broke the hush. "Ella, do you want to step out for a minute? This is—" "No," Ella said instantly. Her voice was sharp, but her eyes were clear. "He needs me. I'm not leaving." The truth was harsher. She needed him, too. Because for the first time in years, she felt the old part of herself waking again. The part that believed she could help, that she could fix something broken. A nurse pointed at Rex's hip. "There's another mark." Mendez leaned over. Shallow, repeated impact bruising. Almost perfectly spaced. Ella's stomach dropped. "That's a rod. Or a stick." The past slammed into her again. Her childhood dog. The boy next door. The sound of wood meeting bone. She squeezed her eyes shut. When she opened them, Rex was staring at her, eyes soft despite the pain. In him, she saw every animal she couldn't save. Every injustice she never had the chance to reverse. "I'm here," she whispered. "I'm not going to fail you." The staff around her went still. Not because of her words, but because of what Rex did next. He lifted his head, slow, trembling, and nudged her wrist again, the same way he had before. Not a plea. A reassurance. As if he was saying, "I believe you." Ella felt her chest cave. She lowered her forehead to his gently. "I'll protect your family. I promise." Around her, the room, filled with strangers, professionals, skeptics, shifted into something warmer. People moved with purpose now. Someone turned on the heater. Another adjusted the pups' blankets. Someone else fetched more supplies. Hands that had been hesitant now helped without question. Mendez stepped back, folding her arms. "All right. We stabilize him. We document everything. And we keep him here under constant observation." A nurse added softly, "And we make sure whoever did this doesn't get a second chance." Ella looked up, eyes fierce but wet. "For the mother," she whispered. Her gaze softened, dropping to Rex. "And for him." Rex's breathing steadied beneath her touch. His eyes fluttered closed, not from fear this time. From safety. From belonging. From the truth written into every scar on his body. That someone had hurt him, but someone else was going to save him. And for the first time since he'd crawled through the hospital doors, Rex finally slept. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, too bright, Too cold, too clinical for the fragile heartbeat lying on the pediatric trauma table. Rex's breaths came uneven now. Quick, shallow pants followed by long, trembling pauses. Every rise and fall of her chest felt like a countdown. A nurse approached with the sedation syringe. "All right, let's try again," he murmured, voice soft but strained. "She needs to stay still for the abdominal scan." But the moment the nurse took one step too close, Rex's lips peeled back. Not fully. Not with the threat of a bite. It was something smaller, sadder. A terrified warning. A plea to keep the world away. Ella felt it before she consciously saw it, the tension rippling through the dog's muscles like a trapped storm. "Stop," Ella whispered. The nurse froze. "Ella, we don't have time for this. She's not going to let us." "She will," Ella said, stepping closer. "But only if I'm here." She extended her hand. Rex's entire body shivered. Her tail didn't wag. She didn't lift her head. She simply inched her paw toward Ella with excruciating caution, like she wasn't sure she was allowed to want safety. The moment their skin touched, Rex exhaled. A long, fragile, surrendering breath. The room stilled with it. The monitors softened, her pulse settling into a less frantic rhythm. Her blood pressure dipped from a storm into something survivable. The nurse looked at the screen, then at Ella. "How are you doing that?" Ella shook her head. "I'm not. She's doing it." She rested her hand on Rex's paw, steady, warm, present. "You can give her the sedation now," Ella murmured. The nurse approached again, slowly this time. Carefully. Rex tensed, but her paw stayed touching Ella's palm. She didn't growl, didn't pull away. She trusted her. Ella felt her throat tighten. The needle slid in, and Rex's eyes fluttered, fear flickering there before the medication took hold. Ella leaned close, brushing her fingers gently over Rex's ear. "I'm not going anywhere," she whispered. Rex's breathing eased. The entire room was silent for a beat, stunned. Finally, someone spoke. "That was incredible," one of the residents breathed. But Ella barely heard them. She was focused only on the dog, on the soft warmth beneath her palm that felt more like a connection than contact. It felt like a promise. The sedation didn't hold long. 20 minutes into the scan, Rex jerked awake. Heart racing, breath sputtering, her body slamming weakly against the restraints. Panic flooded her eyes. Ella was beside her instantly. "Rex. Hey, sweet girl." She cupped the dog's face gently, voice barely above breath. "Look at me. You're safe. I'm here." The dog stilled, painfully fast, like her body recognized that voice more than the drugs. The radiologist, mid-adjustment of the imaging arm, shook his head in disbelief. "This is not normal behavior. Dogs don't imprint this quickly." Ella didn't answer. She just stroked Rex's head in slow circles. "She's scared," Ella whispered. "That's all." Another nurse paused on the threshold, watching. "Or she already chose her person," she murmured. Ella swallowed. Hard. She didn't know what to say to that. During a brief lull in treatment, Ella sank into the chair by the bed. Exhaustion seeped into her bones, tugging old memories forward. Memories she didn't want to touch. But the smell of antiseptic, the sound of beeping monitors, the sight of a dog fighting to breathe. It ripped the past open. She was 10 again, hands tiny and shaking as she held her own dog, Scooter, on a dirty vet table. The neighbors had disciplined him for digging through their trash. Her mother had said nothing. The police had said nothing. Everyone had looked away. And Scooter died because of it. Ella clenched her fists now, forcing herself back into the present. Not again. Never again. She reached for Rex's paw, grounding herself. Rex, even half sedated, weakly nudged her fingers with her nose. The motion shattered her. "You're safe now," Ella whispered, voice cracking. "I'll protect you. I swear." The dog closed her eyes, as if believing her. The spell broke with the sharp click of heels in the hallway. The hospital administrator. Before Ella even turned, she felt the shift in the air, the stiffness, the irritation, the scent of bureaucracy approaching like a storm. "Ms. Vance." Ella stood. "Dr. Collins," she replied tightly. The administrator's lips were a thin, disapproving line as she took in the scene. The dog on the pediatric trauma bed, staff hovering, machines running scans meant for human patients. "This is an emergency facility," Dr. Collins said, enunciating every syllable. "Not an animal shelter." "Rex came in bleeding out," Ella replied. "She would have died on the street. You are diverting resources. She's alive because of those resources." "That," Dr. Collins said sharply, "is not the point." Ella stepped forward. "It's exactly the point." Before the administrator could retort, Rex stirred, just slightly, but enough to lift her head. Her eyes found Ella instantly, confused and frightened. Then, slowly, painfully, Rex placed her head in Ella's lap. The whole room seemed to inhale. Security, standing by the door, visibly softened at the sight. Dr. Collins faltered. Her mouth opened, closed, and opened again. Ella stroked Rex's fur. "I'm not moving her," she said quietly. "Try to drag her out of here and you'll traumatize an animal that's already been tortured." The word hung in the air. Tortured. Security exchanged glances. Dr. Collins tightened her jaw. "Emotional displays won't change policy. If she becomes a liability." "She's a patient," Ella said. "She is not. She is a living being in medical distress," Ella cut in, her voice rising. "And she is under my care." Dr. Collins hesitated again. She wasn't used to nurses talking back. But she also wasn't used to a room full of staff silently backing the one doing it. Finally, the administrator exhaled through her nose. "You have 1 hour," she snapped. 1. And then that animal leaves this hospital." She turned sharply and strode out. The automatic door hissed shut behind her. Ella closed her eyes. 1 hour, she whispered. But the monitors suddenly beeped. Fast, sharp, urgent. A spike in Rex's heart rate. The surgeon leaned over the screen. "Her pulse is too high. Something's wrong." Rex's body tightened again, pain rippling through her abdomen. Then, on the ultrasound, the flicker of distress. Tiny heartbeats. Moving too fast. "Oh God," the resident breathed. "The fetuses." Rex whimpered, a soft, broken sound that cut straight through Ella. Ella pressed her forehead to the dog's. "I won't let them hurt you again," she whispered, trembling. "I promise." Rex's breath hitched. Her paw curled around Ella's fingers. And for one impossible moment, in a hospital not meant for animals, surrounded by rules that didn't fit this kind of emergency, with administrators threatening and clock ticking, the bond between woman and dog formed something unbreakable. A vow. A lifeline. A defiance. And a beginning. For one suspended moment, Ella thought Rex's heart might stop right there beneath her palm. The ultrasound alarms wailed in jagged bursts, sharp enough to slice through the tight air of the pediatric trauma room. Then Rex convulsed. Not a tremor. Not a shiver. A full body, violent seizure that threw her against the restraints and nearly dislodged the 4 in her foreleg. "Seizure!" Ella shouted. "I need magnesium, now!" The room exploded into movement. A resident nearly tripped over a stool trying to reach the emergency med cart. Someone else slammed into the panic button. The monitors lit up with red lines and frantic beeping. Rex's legs kicked helplessly against the table. Foam flecked the side of her mouth. Her abdomen knotted, then unclenched, then knotted again, like her body was giving up its fight one muscle at a time. "Ella," a nurse gasped. "This is bad. We're losing her." "We're not." Ella snapped, tears burning her eyes. "Get Dr. Rivera down here now." The doors burst open. 2 trauma surgeons rushed in. A third followed, tying her hair back as she ran. "What do we have?" Dr. Rivera demanded. "Seizure secondary to preterm labor and multiparous stress," Ella answered, her voice shaking but fast. "Fetal distress on all scans. We're out of time. We need to take the pups now." "A C-section," one surgeon blurted. "Here. It's that or she dies," Ella said. Rex convulsed again, hard enough that her head slammed into the table. Ella caught her. Her hand flew to the dog's cheek, steadying her, grounding her. "I'm right here," Ella whispered, leaning down so Rex could see her. "Stay with me, sweetheart. Please. Stay." Rex's eyes rolled, unfocused, terrified. The overhead lights flickered. Once. Twice. Then half the room went dark. "What the—" "The storm," someone breathed. It hit the main junction. A low rumble of thunder shook the windows. The emergency generator hummed awake, but only partially. The equipment flickered, powered but unstable. Dr. Rivera wasted no time. "Prep for emergency surgery. Now!" Ella didn't leave Rex's side, not even when they pulled the surgical drapes, not when the sterile field was set, not when the first incision was marked on the shaking abdomen. She planted herself by Rex's head. Her hand slid gently to the dog's ear. "Look at me, okay?" Ella whispered. "Just me. Listen to my voice." The shaking eased. Not completely, but enough. The anesthesia nurse adjusted the mask over Rex's muzzle. Her breath steadied into heavy, drug-induced huffs. "You don't have to stay up here," the anesthetist murmured to Ella. "We can handle this." "No," Ella whispered. "You don't understand. She's alone if I let go." The woman nodded quietly. Didn't argue again. The room filled with the metallic smell of disinfectant and sterile equipment. Gloves snapped. Clamps clicked. Monitors beeped unevenly under the unstable emergency power. Dr. Rivera's voice cut through the chaos. "Scalpel." The first incision opened in a clean, practiced line. The sight made Ella's stomach twist, but she held her ground. She kept whispering to Rex, brushing her trembling ear with tender strokes. "You're doing so well," she murmured. "You're so strong. They're coming, okay? Your babies are coming." Rex twitched weakly. The surgeon worked with quiet urgency. Sweat gathered at her temple despite the cold air. "Retractor." A nurse handed it over. The tension in the room was heavy enough to choke on. Ella forced herself not to look at the incision, to focus only on Rex's breathing. Slow, uneven, but present. "I'm in," Dr. Rivera said. "I need suction. She's bleeding more than I like." The suction hissed. The generator lights flickered again. The storm roared overhead like an angry god. Ella didn't move. She kept her forehead pressed gently to Rex's. "You're safe," she whispered. "I swear you're safe." A moment later, "First pup," the surgeon announced. A slick, tiny body was lifted from Rex's abdomen. It didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't cry. Silence filled the room like a physical weight. A nurse rushed the pup to an incubator setup they'd improvised from neonatal equipment. She began chest compressions on a creature the size of her palm. 1, 2, 3. Nothing. The nurse swallowed hard and kept going. Dr. Rivera's voice cracked just slightly. "Next one." The second pup was delivered. Also silent. Ella's chest tightened until her ribs ached. Another nurse took the second pup, rubbing its tiny chest with a warm towel, trying to force life into it. Nothing happened. Dr. Rivera's jaw clenched. Third. Another. Silent. A staffer whispered, voice breaking, "Come on, please." Fourth, Dr. Rivera said, hoarse now. Still silent. Ella's hands shook violently, but she didn't pull away from Rex. She couldn't. She whispered, broken, "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I'm so sorry." Rex's ear twitched faintly, like she could hear the sorrow beneath Ella's voice. The fifth pup came. Then the sixth. Then the seventh. Each silent. Each carried away by trembling hands. Each received desperate compressions and tiny breaths and whispered please. One nurse broke completely, sobbing into her shoulder as she kept working. "We can't lose them all," she whispered. "We can't." Ella forced herself not to collapse. Her tears hit the fur on Rex's muzzle. Dr. Rivera's breath trembled as she reached in again. Last one. The eighth pup was lifted from Rex's womb, small, soaked in blood, limp. No movement. The surgeon's shoulders sank. She passed the tiny body to the waiting nurse. The nurse held the pup in her palms, voice cracking. "Come on, baby, please." Ella closed her eyes. Rex's body was still now, too still. Sedated, yes, but also defeated. As if her heart knew before the room did. Ella whispered through her tears. "I'm so sorry, Rex. I tried. We all tried." The storm rumbled again, rattling the windows. The generator lights flickered, dimmed, stuttered, then stabilized into a dull, humming glow. No one spoke. The nurses kept trying. One by one, each pup lay silent on tiny towels. One by one, hope bled out of the room. Ella's vision blurred. Her fingers sank into Rex's fur, holding on like she might drown without the anchor. "Time of death," a nurse whispered for the first pup, voice breaking. Someone else choked on a sob. And a sound. So small no one reacted at first. A breath. A squeak. No, a cry. A tiny, sharp, impossible cry. Every head snapped up. The nurse holding the last pup gasped, eyes wide. "Dr. Rivera, she's breathing." The room erupted. Not in celebration, not yet, but in stunned, disbelieving adrenaline. "Get me warm blankets. Clear the incubator. Open the pediatric warmer, now." "She's crying, she's actually crying. Move, move, move." Ella's hand flew to her mouth. Rex, unconscious, lay still, but her ear twitched faintly. The pup let out another cry, louder this time. Alive. Fragile. Fighting. Ella sobbed so hard she couldn't breathe. "She made it," she whispered, voice shaking uncontrollably. "Rex, your baby made it." The storm howled outside, but inside the dim pediatric trauma room, beneath the failing lights and trembling hands, one tiny life refused to go silent. And the night everything went wrong ended with a heartbeat. A single cry. A spark in the darkness. A beginning. For a moment, no one breathed. The tiny cry kept filling the trauma room, thin, fragile, but alive. A doctor held the surviving pup in cupped hands, rushing her toward the warmer while a nurse adjusted the heating pads with trembling speed. "She's breathing on her own," the nurse whispered, voice cracking. "Weak, but she's fighting." Ella wiped her cheeks with the back of her wrist, but new tears replaced the old ones instantly. The room, once drowning in hopeless silence, now vibrated with a stunned, trembling awe. "Let me see her," Ella whispered. The doctor stepped aside. And there, so small she fit entirely in Ella's palms, was the pup. Her fur was damp, patchy. Her belly rose and fell with tiny, stubborn breaths. Her eyes were still sealed shut. But she was alive. A miracle among tragedy. One heartbeat in a room full of stillness. Behind them, Rex stirred. A weak sound escaped her throat, half whine, half plea. Ella's head snapped toward her. Rex's eyes fluttered open, heavy with exhaustion and drugs. But when she saw the bundle in Ella's hands, something inside her seemed to ignite. She tried to lift herself. Her muscles shook violently. Her paws scraped uselessly at the table. But she didn't stop. She pushed her trembling muzzle forward, desperate. "She wants her baby," Ella whispered. Someone stepped forward. "We can't risk contamination. She's barely stable." Ella's voice cut through the room like a blade. "She's a mother," she said softly. "And this might be her only chance." The words didn't need arguing. Silence shifted. A nurse pulled the drape aside. Another cleared a small, safe space near Rex's chest, still protected but reachable. Ella moved closer. Rex's breathing hitched as the scent reached her. Ella leaned down, lowering the tiny pup toward Rex's muzzle. "Easy," Ella whispered gently. "She's right here. Your baby's right here." Rex's head trembled as she lifted it the final few centimeters. Then her tongue, dry, slow, swept tenderly across the pup's head. A single lick. Soft. Careful. A mother's touch. The pup wriggled weakly, blindly searching, releasing a small chirping cry. Rex whimpered. a sound filled with pain and love. She curled her paw, just barely, toward the pup, her claws scraping the sheet, trying to cradle her child even as her strength faded. Someone behind Ella sobbed quietly. Another covered their mouth. No one dared break the moment. In that dim, trembling room, lit by failing generators and shadowed by grief, a circle formed around a mother and her surviving child. No machines, no medical chaos, no frantic shouting. Just breath. Just love. Just life choosing to stay. Ella lowered herself to her knees beside Rex's head. Her hand found the dog's cheek, stroking gently as Rex kept nuzzling the tiny pup. "You did it," Ella whispered, voice shaking. "Your baby made it." Rex's eyes fluttered shut, not in pain this time, but in relief so deep it was almost prayer. Minutes passed. Or maybe it was only seconds. Time stopped caring. Eventually, the doctor cleared her throat softly. "We need to move the pup back to the warmer. Just for stabilization." Ella nodded, but when she gently lifted the pup away, Rex whimpered again, a thin, desperate cry. Ella felt it like a knife. But she leaned down and pressed her forehead gently to Rex's. "She's okay," Ella whispered. "I promise. I'll bring her right back." Rex's breathing steadied, though each inhale came thinner than the last. Ella carried the pup back to the warmer. The tiny body twitched, searching for warmth, searching for the mother she'd barely touched. The nurse glanced at Ella. "What do we call her?" "For the chart, I mean." Ella swallowed, her voice barely audible. "Hope." The word seemed to settle in the air, soft but powerful. A fitting name for the one heartbeat still refusing to fade. Not official, not yet, but true. Ella turned back toward Rex. The dog's eyes were heavy, glazed, but still watching her. Still listening. Still guarding her baby with every fading thread of strength. Ella walked back to her, touching her forehead one more time. "She's safe," Ella whispered. "I won't leave her. I won't leave you." Rex exhaled shakily, the sound almost a sigh. For a brief stretch of fragile peace, Rex stabilized, her heartbeat weak but steady, her breaths shallow but rhythmic. The room dimmed to quiet murmurs, hands moving gently now instead of frantically. But no one said they were out of danger. No one dared. Because the way Rex's chest rose, and fell, and paused, just a fraction too long each time. It told Ella the truth before anyone else realized it. Rex was holding on. But only just. Ella bent down, pressing her cheek to the fur between Rex's ears. "Your baby's name is Hope," she whispered. "Just hold on a little longer. She needs you. I need you." Rex blinked slowly. Once. Twice. As if memorizing the sound of Ella's voice. As if saying goodbye. Ella squeezed her eyes shut. "Stay with me." But Rex's breathing grew thinner. The warmth beneath Ella's hand flickered. The monitors didn't alarm yet. Not yet. But they would. Somewhere behind her, Hope let out a tiny cry. Sharp, insistent, alive. And Rex's ears twitched weakly, responding. A mother's instinct persisting even as her body faded. Ella took Rex's paw gently in her own, holding on as though she could transfer her heartbeat into the failing dog. "Hope," she whispered again, voice trembling. "For her. For you. For all of us." Rex breathed out. Slow, soft, almost peaceful. And for that small, sacred moment, in a room full of death and miracles, mother and child were both still fighting. But only one of them had enough strength left to win. The room felt colder. Not because the temperature changed, but because something in Rex was fading, slipping further with each weakening breath. The monitors hadn't flatlined, but they'd settled into a rhythm that felt like the far edge of life, the fragile edge where a body holds on only through sheer will. Ella stayed right beside her, one hand on Rex's paw, the other brushing back the fur behind her ear. Her eyes were swollen and red, but she didn't bother wiping the tears anymore. There was no point. They just kept coming. "Stay with me," she whispered again. Rex didn't respond with movement this time, just a faint flicker beneath her closed eyelids, the barest sign she could still hear. A doctor approached quietly. "Ella, we need to talk about." No, the word came out cracked but fierce. Not now. He nodded and stepped back. No one pushed her anymore. No one tried to pull her away from the table. They all understood in that unspoken, reverent way that sometimes the rules stop mattering. Sometimes love outranks protocol. Rex's abdomen rose and fell erratically now, her breaths shallow and tight. Internal bleeding. They all knew it. The delicate stitching had held through the surgery, but her damaged organs were losing the fight. Her heart was beating too hard to compensate, burning itself out in the process. A nurse adjusted the four. "She's trying," she murmured. "She's really trying." Ella nodded, stroking Rex's cheek. "She's a mother. Of course she is." As if responding to the word itself, Rex tried to lift her head. Her muscles trembled violently. Her legs twitched, bracing. She pushed upward with a sudden surge of desperation, but collapsed instantly, her whole body shaking with exhaustion. Ella caught her head before it hit the table, guiding her down gently. "Easy," she whispered. "Shoo, shoo. You don't have to get up." Rex whimpered softly, a sound that broke the already fraying edges of Ella's heart. She pressed her forehead against Rex's, breathing with her, matching the rhythm, willing it to stabilize. It didn't. The monitors began to stutter, the blips separated by two long pauses. Rex's chest hitched. She inhaled, thin, shaky. Exhaled. Slower. "She's crashing," a nurse whispered. Ella's heart slammed against her ribs. "Rex," she said urgently, lifting her head so the dog could see her eyes. "Hey, hey, look at me." Rex's eyes opened only halfway, just enough for Ella to see the weakening amber glow beneath them. The dog's gaze wandered, unfocused at first. Then slowly, painfully, she turned toward Ella's hand. And with the last of her coordination, Rex pressed her nose into Ella's palm. The gesture wasn't strong. It wasn't even steady. But it was deliberate. Absolute trust, distilled into one final act. Ella sobbed, clutching Rex's muzzle gently between both hands. "I'm here. I'm right here. You don't have to be afraid." Around them, staff members paused in whatever they were doing. Nurses wiping down equipment, doctors reviewing charts, med techs restocking trays, every movement stilled. The pediatric trauma room, once filled with frantic chaos, now felt like a chapel. Someone dimmed the lights. Someone else whispered, "God," because they could all feel it. The end was near. A thin cry broke through the heaviness, a tiny wavering sound from across the room. Hope. Ella turned instinctively. The newborn pup squirmed inside the warmer, blind and desperate, her tiny voice punching through the stillness like a beacon. Rex's ears twitched. It was barely noticeable, but Ella saw it. The pup cried again, sharper this time, a plea that cut straight through the air. Rex's body reacted before her eyes opened fully. She tried to lift her head again, her muscles flaring with trembling effort. Her back paw scraped the edge of the table. She was trying to go to her baby. Ella's heart cracked. "It's okay," she whispered, voice trembling as she gently placed a hand on Rex's side. "She's safe. I promise. She's warm. She's breathing." But Rex continued trying, her body spasming with effort. Her instincts were louder than her failing organs. Her motherhood stronger than her pain. The pup cried again. Rex's chest heaved. Her breathing stuttered. Her heartbeat rattled out an irregular pattern that made the doctor at the monitor wince. "Ella," he began gently, "we need to consider." Rex suddenly jerked, her front legs stretching out toward the sound of her pup. Her claws scraped the metal. Her paw trembled violently in the air. She wanted hope. She needed hope. Even dying couldn't dim that force. Ella burst into tears so hard she couldn't speak. She placed her hand beneath Rex's raised paw, supporting it. Rex let her weight fall into Ella's palm, exhausted. "I know," Ella choked out. "You want her. You want to make sure she's okay." A nurse whispered, "Should we bring the pup over?" The doctor hesitated, but only for a second. Then he nodded. The nurse moved with reverent care, lifting the tiny pup from the warmer and carrying her over in cupped hands. Ella guided Rex's shaking paw onto the towel where the nurse laid the newborn. The pup squirmed, crying, pressing blindly toward the warmth she sensed. Rex lowered her head millimeter by millimeter. Sweat broke through Ella's palms as she supported the dog's trembling neck. Then finally, gently, Rex's muzzle brushed her baby's side. The pup nuzzled back, tiny body pushing into her mother's fur. A soft whine escaped Rex, filled with a love so deep it hurt to hear. Her eyes fluttered. Her breathing steadied, not stronger, but calmer, as if a weight she'd carried since stumbling into the hospital had finally eased. Ella leaned closer, her tears falling into Rex's fur. "She's safe," she whispered. "You brought her into this world. You saved her. It's okay. It's okay to rest." Rex nuzzled her pup one last time, her breath ghosting over the tiny body. The pup squirmed, cried. Rex didn't lift her head again. Her chest rose, shallow, paused, too long, then rose again, barely. Ella held her, shaking. "Rex, Rex, please." But the dog's eyes were already closing, not from pain, not from fear, but from relief, surrounded by the humans who fought for her, with her baby pressed against her side. And Ella, her chosen human, holding her through the final dawn. The room held its breath. The room had gone unbearably still. The vet whispered something to the nurse, numbers slipping downward, pressure falling, pulse fading. But Ella didn't hear any of it. All she heard was the shallow, wet rattle of Rex's breaths, each one sounding further away than the last. Rex lay on her side, belly rising only slightly now, the pup curled weakly against her, eyes sealed shut. Her fur, once glossy, once full of life, looked too thin, too dull, too defeated. The internal bleeding had spread faster than anyone expected, faster than anyone could stop. "Rex, sweetheart, please," Ella whispered, brushing trembling fingers over Rex's ear. "Just stay with me. Just a little longer." Rex's eyes fluttered open, not wide, not clear, but open, enough to see Ella, enough to hold her gaze. And something in that softened, fading stare said everything the dog no longer had the strength to bark or whine. "I hear you. I'm trying." Her breaths trembled. Her ribs barely moved. The vet took a step forward, then paused, hands lowering, face shifting with the dawning understanding that this moment was no longer medical. It was personal, sacred, something raw and ancient and heartbreakingly final. Rex stirred, barely, but enough to gather what remained of her strength, pulling it from wherever dying mothers find it. Her hind leg twitched, then her front. Her muscles strained, quivering under the effort. Her body trembled violently, and for a second Ella panicked, thinking it was another wave of shock, but then she understood. Rex wasn't in pain. She was trying to move, trying to lift herself. Just enough. Ella quickly slid her hands beneath the dog's shoulders to help, supporting what Rex could no longer hold. Rex pushed her head forward, inch by aching inch, until her muzzle nudged softly against the tiny pup tucked beside her. The nudge was deliberate, unmistakable, a mother's instinct carved into her final act. Ella's breath hitched. Her throat closed. "Rex, no. Don't do that. Please don't." But Rex nudged the pup again, weaker this time, her nose trembling as she guided her newborn toward the warmth of human hands. Toward safety. Toward Ella. Ella shook her head violently, tears splattering onto the blanket. "Please don't make me. Please don't do this, Rex. Please." But Rex kept pushing. Not physically, she was too weak for that now, but with the sheer will inside her, the push of a mother who knew she had only seconds left to protect her child. The pup made a tiny sound, a soft, squeaky mewl, as if answering the command none of them could bear to hear. Ella broke, just shattered. A sound tore out of her chest, raw, fractured, begging, for a world that wasn't this cruel, for a miracle that wasn't coming. The staff couldn't hide anymore. One nurse covered her mouth to keep her sobs quiet. Another wiped his cheeks openly. The vet turned away, shoulders shaking despite his attempts to remain composed. No one tried to speak. No one pretended there was hope left. This was goodbye. Ella reached out with unsteady hands, lifting the fragile, nearly weightless pup. The warmth of it, the helplessness, the responsibility, it cracked something wide open inside her. The pup nestled instinctively into her palms, tiny nose searching for comfort. Rex watched, or tried to. Her eyelids fluttered. Her chest spasmed. Then, slowly, painfully, she lowered her head and placed it into Ella's lap as if it were the softest pillow in the world. Her nose brushed Ella's thigh. Her breath came in the faintest puffs of warmth. Ella bent over her. "I'm here," she whispered, choking on every word. "I'm right here. You can rest now. I'll take care of your baby. I promise. I swear it." Something in Rex's body eased. Her muscles softened. Her shoulders dropped. Her breaths, though frail, became peaceful, thin, but rhythmic, as though the promise alone had let something inside her finally relax. Ella stroked her head with trembling fingers. "Good girl. You're such a good girl. The best girl." Rex's ear twitched faintly, as if she heard it. As if she liked hearing it one last time. The monitor beeped erratically, skipping beats. Each gap grew longer. The nurse stepped closer, watching the numbers drop into territory that could only mean one thing. But still, no one spoke. No one intruded. The pup squirmed gently in Ella's hands, letting out a soft squeak. Rex's fading eyes shifted toward the sound. Barely. Just enough. She saw her baby. She saw Ella holding it. And something like relief washed over her features. So quiet, so pure, it almost didn't look like death. It looked like acceptance. It looked like love doing the only thing it could when time finally ran out. Rex exhaled softly, one long, fragile breath that trembled across Ella's palms. Then another. Then nothing. A single, flat, continuous tone filled the room. The heart monitor's line went straight. No dip. No rise. No rhythm. Just silence. Silence so thick it absorbed every sob, every breath, every heartbeat that wasn't hers anymore. Ella bent over Rex, burying her face in the still warm fur, shaking with grief that broke the sterile room wide open. The staff cried without shame, because they had witnessed devotion and sacrifice, and a final act of love that no medical training could ever prepare them for. Rex's body lay still. The pup mewled helplessly. Ella held both the beginning and the end in her arms. And the room remained silent, reverent, shattered, as the final dawn of Rex's life slipped quietly into memory. 3 weeks passed, though to Ella it felt like a strange floating stretch of time, long and short all at once. Her apartment, once quiet, now pulsed with gentle new life. Little paws skittered across her wooden floors. A tiny puppy belly rose and fell in the soft morning light. And a small warm weight slept curled against her chest when nightmares woke her at night. The surviving pup, Rex's pup, had been named on the first morning Ella brought her home. "Hope," she whispered, as the newborn squirmed in her hands, blind and impossibly fragile. It felt right. It felt chosen. As though the little life pressed against her had carried the name all along, waiting for someone to speak it aloud. Now, Hope darted around the apartment with growing confidence, ears bouncing, tail wagging like she was trying to stir joy back into the world. Ella watched her from the couch, smiling through the ache that still sat heavy in her chest. She reached down and scooped the pup into her arms. Hope licked her chin enthusiastically, then snuggled into the crook of her elbow. "You have your mother's stubbornness," Ella murmured with a watery laugh. "And her sweetness." Hope yawned. Ella held her closer. The little heartbeat warmed her palm. The little heartbeat that shouldn't have survived, and yet it had. Because Rex made sure it did. Because Rex chose her. The thought brought a sting to Ella's eyes, but not like before. Grief no longer tore her open. Now it simply expanded inside her, softer, quieter, something she could breathe around. She brushed a thumb over Hope's tiny paw. "I'm doing my best," she whispered. "I hope she knows that." Her voice wavered, but the room stayed peaceful. 2 days later, the hospital invited Ella back. She walked through the ER doors with Hope tucked into a small carrier, tail thumping against the soft mesh. Staff members smiled when they saw her. Some waved. A few reached out to stroke Hope's head as they passed. "Look at her," one nurse whispered. "She's getting so big." But the warmth in the hospital air carried a softness today. Something reverent. The chief nurse guided Ella toward a freshly polished wall near the staff break room. A small crowd gathered, voices quieting as Ella approached. There, mounted in brushed metal and warm wood, was a plaque. "Beloved mother, brave soul, the dog who protected life until her last breath. Forever part of our hospital family." Ella blinked rapidly. The words blurred. A nurse sniffed behind her. We felt she deserved it," he said softly. "She changed us." Another added, "I've been a vet tech for 5 years before this job, and I've never seen love like that. Not that pure." A third nurse wiped a tear. "She made me go home and hug my kids a little tighter. I haven't stopped, actually." They shared stories. Ones Ella had never heard. How Rex had nudged a crying child in the waiting room hours before she collapsed. How she'd rested her head on a stranger's knee, calming him through a panic attack. How she'd looked at every staff member like she could see straight through their fear. "She trusted you the most," someone whispered. Ella felt the words land deep in her chest, like a warm stone settling into place. She swallowed hard. I hope I was worthy of that." "You were," the chief nurse said simply. "She chose right." They had a moment of silence. Hope whimpered softly in her carrier, sensing the heaviness. Ella knelt and unzipped the top. Hope lifted her head, blinking up at her with wide, curious eyes. Ella gently placed the tiny front paws on the plaque's wooden frame. "You're part of this story too," she whispered to her. As the weeks continued, life in the ER returned to its usual chaos. Broken bones, frantic nights, voices calling codes across the halls, but something intangible lingered there. During thunderstorms, the nurses swore they heard scratching at the side door closest to where they'd brought Rex in. Soft, insistent, steady. One night, during a heavy downpour, a paramedic claimed he heard a low whine, thin, almost like the wind, almost like memory. He turned the corner expecting a stray. Nothing. Just rain. But he left the door unlocked anyway. "Just in case," he muttered. Old habits. Stories spread. Not ghost stories. No one dared cheapen it like that. These were love stories. Stories of a mother who refused to leave the place where she last protected her child. Back home, Ella sat on her bed with Hope nestled in her lap, chewing enthusiastically on a toy shaped like a little chicken. The pup's tail wagged hard enough to shake her entire body. "You're going to knock yourself over," Ella laughed. Hope barked a tiny, squeaky bark of defiance. Ella stroked the pup's back, gaze softening as she looked toward the window. A storm was rolling in, silver flashes flickering across the sky. A familiar ache swelled inside her, but not the kind that hollowed her out. This one filled her. Slowly, steadily. Ella leaned down, pressing her forehead gently to Hope's. The pup stilled, then nuzzled into her, warm and trusting. "Your mother trusted me," Ella whispered, voice barely above the rumble of distant thunder. "And I'll honor her forever." Hope licked her chin as if sealing the vow. Outside, rain began tapping softly against the glass. Inside, Ella held the living piece of Rex's final courage. A promise kept, a future gifted, a hope chosen. And the quiet felt, for the first time in weeks, like peace.